we shouldn't aspartame. We shouldn't put anything in our bodies you can't pronounce. Those words.
Hey, good point.
Poly something and mini something. And
So we're on here,
okay.
we're on here.
Mr. is here, John is here, Michael is here.
Still typing up?
Ron is here.
Okay.
Dean's not here. And we have. Lobster tails. Wow. You really went all out, Lester. Holy
Well,
cow.
hey, you know, it's, I
Geez.
try.
See it more often.
You were out of Alaskan king crab legs,
But-
are you? I
but
mean,
is this so they'll talk fast?
yes. Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. I guess we can get started. Good evening. I'd like to call this Wednesday, February 8th, 2023 meeting of the City of Manassas Park Planning Commission to order. The time is 7 p.m. My name is Lester Finkel. Sitting this evening are Martha Collier, John Evans, Alana Mensing, and Michael Beckett's. Our first order of business is the moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Beckett's, will you kindly lead us? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next agenda item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda for this evening? Seeing none, would anyone care to make a motion to approve the agenda as is?
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries unanimously. Next agenda item is adoption of minutes from December 14th, 2022 meeting. Are there any changes that anyone found for the meeting minutes? Okay. Seeing none, would anyone care to make a motion to adopt the meeting minutes as is?
Moved.
Motion, second?
second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Are there any members of the public present to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll move along. Tonight's item is item 7A. It's presentation of the City of Manassas Park Capital Improvement Program for fiscal year 2024 to fiscal year 2028. We will just be having the presentation, the initial presentation this evening. And at this time, I'll turn it over to our city manager.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. So to start off, this year's CIP presentation will be shorter. The governing body asked that we just really focus on FY24 projects. Unfortunately, you guys are going to get a lot more projects that will probably be presented to the governing body, because there's a lot of FY24 projects right now that may not make the cut once we get revenues in and see what we can actually fund. So your presentation will likely be longer than the governing body's presentation. But it is the 5-year CIP, so I'm going to give the summary of what's happening kind of across the 5 years, and then but the project by project slides will just be for FY24 this evening. But we did provide a read-ahead packet for you all that has all the projects listed on there. So feel free to please take a look at that and shoot us any emails with any inquiries you have here. And also, if there's projects that that are not listed there that you want to see on there. Again, I know we talked about the skate park last year as well. You know, the governing body is going to be discussing their priorities here soon. You may want to advocate things like that for, but it's not on here. It's always been on kind of a desired CIP, but it hasn't been pushed to the front by the governing body. But if that's something you guys want to do, I encourage you to communicate with the governing body. You have the vice mayor right here as well, so to pass along that information about that being a priority if that's still it. So tonight I'll give the 5-year model for the general fund and enterprise funds, just giving you kind of a in-depth analysis, kind of where we're at across the 5 years. And then we'll just turn it over to each department to go over the project slides. We'll kind of start with kind of the overhead, administration, and IT, and the general services components, and then turn it over to each department to go over their different elements or their different projects. So I'll start with the 5-year model here. You can see kind of the amounts here. We're about $57 million over 5 years. Really, it's closer to just above $50 million when you exclude the ARPA-funded CIP items. And the ARPA budget, again, is separately presented to the governing body, but you can see, you'll see in the spreadsheet that we eventually publish all the different projects that are already approved via ARPA for funding from the CIP. We'll see if the governing body wants to change that this coming budget cycle or not. But so we have about $6.5 million funded via ARPA. Overall, though, you can see we're at $21 million in FY24. That's why I said there's a lot of front-loaded projects in FY24 that I'm not sure are gonna survive. But there's some pretty big-ticket items here, just to kind of go over from the top. So transportation will likely remain that way because a lot of this is funded by external sources. So there's 3 big projects that are really driving the variance. You see the rest of the years it's kind of hovering around the $1.5 to $2 million, and then year one it's $7.6 million. One big project is the VRE garage. So we received about $2.5 million that our transportation team and Calvin's team were able to secure to contribute towards that garage. So that's a big chunk of money for that. And then we had an additional close to $2 million for different Manassas Drive projects, one for resurfacing. That's still not clear that we're going to get that grant, but hopefully we get the funding from the state to do a complete resurfacing of the majority of Manassas Drive because we know it needs it. And then the second one, we've been approved for grants over $1 million for safety enhancements all along Manassas Drive. So those 3 projects alone are kind of driving that variance for transportation here for year one. But that will likely remain because, again, that's not taxpayer money per se. It's a lot of grant-funded projects that our team has done a great job in securing for our city. For fire, that looks inflated this year, but that's really a lot of the ARPA spending that actually is on the fire department. There's some renovations we want to do at the fire station, other projects listed there. So that's kind of driving that increase there. For the community development department, you have the smart meters across these 2 years. That's why these 2 numbers look a lot higher. It's about $1 million per year there. And then for Parks and Rec, you see some larger numbers. Some of that is ARPA funded as well in this year. And then really going out these years, you have some major renovations to the facility at the Signal Bay Water Park, the actual structures there, the bathhouse, and the pavilion as well. Those are all big projects that we're hoping to knock out in the CIP, and that's kind of driving some of these big numbers here up front for Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec, again, was a lot of their infrastructure has been neglected. You'll see when they get to that slide, most of our infrastructure is from the 90s, so it's really time to enhance, invest in our parks as well. One big change this year, you'll see the schools actually in our CIP, and I'll talk about that next slide, which is not on your packet because that was kind of a last-minute addition. It's a ongoing discussion I've had with the schools about kind of what's changing with schools and state funding and kind of where the city's going to have to step up now to help out our school system. So you will see the actual schools now incorporated their capital funding. We're going to go to a new model this year in budgeting where we'll have our operating contributions to them and then also separate contributions to capital. We've done that on occasion in the past, so if you all remember the high school roof, that was separately called out in the CIP as extra funding. And I want to say in FY17 there was some school buses as well that were thrown on in that budget as well. So it's not, there has been times when we've done this, but now we have to just make it consistent to enable our schools to function. I'll discuss that next slide. And then administration general services. So the city hall payments start in FY24, very small. It's only $500,000 in FY24, then goes up to $1 million in FY25, then $1.5 million in FY26, and then kind of stays static like that. And that's just to give time for all these 2-over-2s to get built up, which are paying for this building. But other big projects in that you have the ERP project, which we talked about last night with the governing body. That's about $1 million that we're forecasting here in FY24 to implement a new software, all the different software elements, plus getting that implementation support. And then a big project here is the acquisition of the building for the Community Development Department, which is Development Services and Public Works, along with some of our school facility team and transportation. We want to invest in them because they are kind of the last piece that hasn't gotten a facility. Every city department has been served except for those elements, the kind of the Public Works and Community Development elements. So that's why this number is big as well. But I'm going to be looking to utilize kind of development to pay for that. So hopefully we won't actually have to tap into that money. So that's kind of, stay tuned for that, but that's still in the works with the governing body there. So that's kind of driving kind of the big numbers here in 24 before it levels off there. And you can see kind of for kind of some other major takeaways, the new development, community development facility. I didn't talk about the school security. That's also part of this administration and general services for the facility section. We're investing a lot of money on safety enhancements for our school systems. That's already been approved by the governing body. Some of it's being grant funded by the federal government, and then the rest of it we're financing over 10 years. And then also the city hall lease payments that kick in as well. Any questions on the summary here, the 5-year? No? Okay. So school systems, we need to talk about this. There's a change happening with state funding besides the error. There's an error right now, I guess, in budgeting that's reducing some funding to schools, but we hope that that's going to be addressed by the General Assembly. But regardless, there is actually a decrease in the increased amounts that we're accustomed to for schools. So if you look at this number, it looks much larger in 24 than what we're getting in 23, but that's because the schools are actually carrying over about $1.5 million that they received in previous years for capital, for one-time capital, that they're able to kind of carry over because they didn't spend it all on capital. They're not projecting to spend it all on capital in FY23, so they're going to carry it over to FY24. So this number is inflated, and in fact, their budget's almost flat when it comes to the state revenue. And why is that different? Because since my time here, we've been used to the schools getting about around $2 million increases each year from the state. So the state's been contributing their funding to our school systems because they realize kind of our inability to pay, and because enrollments still were kind of flattish, right? With enrollments dropping, if you watch the superintendent's presentation, and the governing body will see that as well, enrollments now are declining, which means that state funding is going to not grow as much as it used to. So we need to kind of be aware of that. However, you're still going to have a lot of capital overhead, right? We still have these buildings and all the equipment there that we still have to maintain. And the other item that we have to take care of with schools is teacher pay, right? The rest of the school systems are all increasing pay, so that's going to be continual variable costs that are going to grow, even though the superintendent's reducing FTE levels as enrollment goes down. We still have to pursue kind of pay raises as well. So there's going to be some financial pressure that the city's going to have to kind of step up and make sure that we're adequately funding our schools, and that's why you see that change in the CIP model in this year. And I'll spend more time going over that with the governing body when I talk about the overall city budget as well. But again, now that you see kind of state funding is beginning to flatten or increase, which again, we're going to continue to monitor, but you can kind of see the projections of what's happening. And of course, anything can change, right? The General Assembly could just say, and the governor in the next year say, hey, guess what, we're just increasing funding overall for schools, but just keep an eye on our enrollments as they continue to decline, that the state is not going to aggressively fund increases like they were before. And then again, in the future, LCI, the calculation for kind of the need, may go down if we're successful economically as well. That hasn't happened yet, so the LCI is kind of still the same, so we're still going to see that impact in the future as well. So we got to kind of keep an eye on that and make sure that we're maintaining kind of the funding levels for our school systems. So like I said, this year kind of different, where the city will kind of, I'm proposing the city to kind of step in and help the schools out with kind of that large capital overhead that they have, even though they're going to have declining state revenues. To continue to maintain that overhead. But we'll continue to monitor what's going to happen year by year over the revenues, and hopefully the state will fix the funding error as well, which will give some breathing room for our school system. So overall, this number, we talked about the $57 million, but that didn't include the $1.5 million that the schools is carrying over. So in reality, if you include that $1.5 million, total spending for the general fund is $58.8 million. You can see half of that is for facilities and grounds and transportation. We talked about transportation. We talked about facilities, that facilities component, of course, including the city hall lease payments, the community development building itself, which is a pretty big investment, all the security enhancements we're doing with the schools. There's a lot of investment happening right now in our facilities and grounds, and that's driving that. And then you can see the other numbers for the other departments. Fleet, that's another one where you're going to see the numbers here about some pretty big inflation happening with fleet that's driving up the cost, and that was expected. If anyone we had to decrease the personal property tax rate this year because overall all vehicles assessment values skyrocketed by about 25%. So, and guess what? We had to buy vehicles, so we're seeing that 25% increase in cost as well for our fleet. So hopefully those numbers will come down, but we're seeing that impact as well. Water and sewer, not a lot of change from last year. The big drivers, of course, for water and sewer projects. You see the facility project here. That's the enterprise fund contributions towards the new community development building, which includes public works and the maintenance of our enterprise infrastructure. That's why there's a piece funded from there as well. You have the rugby yard, which Calvin will talk about a bit later, and kind of the price increases associated with that. And then you have some other projects like SCADA that we're looking to do to enhance our sewer system as well. So overall, $27 million spending, which is pretty close to where we were in last year's model, and still 57% of that is debt. UOSA debt did go up a little bit. They did some new issuances of debt, not for additional capacity for the city, but just to kind of support their ongoing capital maintenance requirements for the sewer system. So you'll see that number go up. But in the long run, if this chart kind of goes out to FY30, you do see a dip in UOSA debt. So that's going to help in the long run the sewer fund, but not in the short run. So in the short run, we're going to still see the pressures of high debt when it comes to UOSA. And then you can see how much 17% of this is for actual maintenance of the total budget. We're spending about 17% just for maintenance and upgrades to the system, and then 8% for the water system phases that Calvin will be discussing here. Most of those which will at least have started in 23 or will start in FY24. And then 13% for facility. The biggest driver, that's the community development building. Stormwater, this number continues to go up as we're going to get closer to implementing the stream restoration project. I'm removing the name Russia Branch Stream Restoration because we're not most likely going to pursue Russia Branch Stream Restoration. It's going to be another stream or two that we're going to look at across the city to actually achieve our goals. So we're hoping to jump on an Arlington contract, so I could have already presented that to you all in the governing body about what the solution was. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that for legal reasons. So Calvin and his team are working on an RFP that we'll be issuing so we can pursue a public-private partnership to hopefully reduce the price tag for stream restoration. And we are going to be, with governing body approval, submitting of a congressional directed funding support request to our senators to help us fund stream restoration projects to comply with EPA mandates. So hopefully that will all reduce the price tag on our residents and reduce the pressure to incur any debt related to stormwater. But you can see that's right now, we're still keeping the old numbers there just to be ultra conservative about what stream restoration is going to take. But we hope through different grant applications and the different projects that we're getting private sector support for, we're going to be able to reduce that price tag for our residents. Okay, so total CIP numbers, not counting the actual debt payments for water, sewer, and stormwater. You're looking at a total across the city, schools, everything we're doing, transportation, and utilities, about $95 million. It's really more like $89 million when you reduce the ARPA funding, which is one-time money. You can see about half of that, or over half of that, is our different enterprise funds and transportation. You can almost treat transportation as its own fund as well because it's funded largely by transportation funding sources. There are a handful of projects there that the city is funding this year. And you can see kind of, again, no change in these other numbers from the other slides, so I won't spend too much time on that. And then again, we talked about all the additional facility investments that we're taking on over these 5 years. So are there any questions about the overall 5-year summary? Because now we're just going to jump into kind of project by project for FY24. Okay. So we're going to start again with administration and IT, and I will turn it over to both Keith and Don.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So like Lasso said, Don and I will sort of share the duties in briefing the next several slides, which is going to be IT-based. So for software for fiscal year 24, the biggest project is going to be GIS enhancement. at 75,000, and then server operating system upgrades at 10,000 for a total of 85,000 for software. The GIS piece, initially when we onboarded Esri GIS 2 years ago, we focused primarily on functional needs, seeing things on a map. So we worked on putting data, our data, into each map layers for specific function, land use, parcel, assessment, and then tracking fleets to include public safety's fleet for situational awareness. Now that we sort of got those functions in place and they're working well, generally speaking, we're moving toward the next phase, which is creating that GIS base layer for future integration with either core system or new technologies as we move forward. So that's the intent of the enhancement. We're also looking to create more dashboard for data analytics internally for staff, as well as public-facing dashboard for residents. Any question on software? Okay. I'll turn it over to Don for hardware.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. To start off with our hardware, our main hardware that's just the hardware is our laptops and computers. We have initially about 200 computers in the city, laptops and towers, desktops, and we're looking to change our thing up to a 4-year cycle, meaning replacement of every year of 50 computers each year. Our infrastructure, we're looking at as this year we're doing our VM upgrade here at City Hall. Next year we want to do the upgrade over at PD, so we have a disaster recovery from one to the other. And that's one of the big drivers for our infrastructure this next year. Also, we're looking at doing some switching of a total of 29 switches that are ready to be replaced. And this next year, we have moved away from Cisco and went to Aruba switches, which we've done at the City Hall. And so we're moving to do the Aruba switching over at the other facilities. And for our security this coming year, we're looking at, we don't really have a disaster recovery for IT, and we're looking to work on creating that for this year and then estimate costs for next year of what we've decided to do. We will build out the next year of what we've done, put together. So that's then one more item that we have for security is we're looking that we want to encrypt the data between the sites. We have dark fiber from site to site, but that doesn't go directly here. And it goes to like the Comcast center, and then from Comcast to here. We're looking to put encryption between the sites so that as the data goes across that it's encrypted. And that is it. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. So the next several slides will go into the fleet replacement program. We'll start from a broad summary, and then we'll go department specific. Just to provide some quick historical context, when we onboarded the enterprise fleet program 2 years ago, the intent was to replace all of our white fleet, the non-specialty vehicles, which were well past their life cycle, as well as to save equity in terms of when you replace vehicles sooner, you earn more equity rather than holding them for a long period of time. And then new vehicles translate to better saving in terms of fuel and maintenance. And so those were the main reasons for this program. We've done that for the last 2 years. We're going to fiscal year 24, and we're asking to replace 19 vehicles. Okay, so the fiscal year 24 fleet cost, the total cost is going to be $305,000. For if you annualize that over 5 years, it's $1.5 million, and we are asking to replace approximately 19 vehicles. Long list, busy slide, but we'll go into the department specific here in a bit. But there are a couple of things I want to point out on this slide. If you notice on the bottom part of the slide, there are 5 vehicles that are highlighted in red. Those are the new vehicles that we've added on this year. that were not initially a part of the fleet program because of additional operational needs. For example, the deputy fire marshal was added recently, as well as the 3 SRO that were hired through the grant program. So we needed those vehicles. And then the office of the city manager, we had a vehicle that we lent to the assessor, as well as the facility team. And we needed a new vehicle for central staff to attend seminar, things of like that nature. And then, as you notice, there are some footnotes included with some of the vehicles, and those are there to denote the aftermarket costs to upfit some of these vehicles, things like lights, markings, et cetera, that are part of the lease payment. So it's already included in the lease payment. Okay, so breaking down by departments, starting with police, we are going to replace 11 vehicles and 3 SRO for a total of 14 vehicles. That cost is $236,000 for fiscal year '24, which equates roughly to $1.1 million over 5 years. And the reason is obvious. These are the PD vehicles that are high in mileage, and they are needed for daily operational control as well as to help decrease the maintenance costs. And they do include the new SRO vehicles, like I mentioned, and the SRO vehicles will be equipped just like a regular patrol vehicles, just to maintain that operational flexibility. And if you have any question, the Chief Lugo can also chime in as well. Okay. For Public Works, we are asking to replace 2 F-250. These are the street vehicles that are used during snow operation as well as work on maintaining our streets. They are currently 2015, and they are showing signs of wear and tear. And the cost to replace these 2 vehicles is approximately $22,000, annualized over 5 years, approximately $111,000. These vehicles will be equipped with the plow and spreader. That's going to be handled within the Public Works CIP program. For the fire department, we're asking to replace 2 vehicles. 1 vehicle is for the battalion chief. That's the F-350. That one does have a lot of special equipment, so the upfit, the aftermarket is a little bit higher. That's a conservative budget, just to make sure we can stay on budget. And then we're also adding, like I said, the Deputy Fire Marshal F-250 for a total cost of $32,000, annualized over 5 years, approximately $163,000. Most of these vehicles are operational in nature, and so there's a strong need to replace them. And then lastly, the SUV for the Office of the City Manager. This is a new request, approximately $13,000 annualized over 5 years, $65,000. This one is going to be similar to the most of the PD vehicle except the outfitting. So we'll deduct that upfit cost from the lease payment. I believe that is it. Any question on the fleet?
Just a couple of questions. So just to clarify, you talk about replacements, but you're actually replacing 14 and purchasing 5 new.
That's correct. We added 5 new to the program.
And just for the Office of the City Manager vehicle, what was the utilization of the prior vehicle before you loaned it out to justify buying a new one?
It's technically not the offices. It's for all City Hall. So everyone who's in this building, we're sharing 1 vehicle for everyone in this building. And but that vehicle had to go over to the development services because we've added an additional code enforcement officer. Mm-hmm. We're also supposed to be bringing on a building official. So our building inspector has a car, and also our code enforcement officer has one. And then we're going to say, okay, building official and extra code enforcement, you're going to share 1 vehicle. Mm-hmm. So it's not like that we're getting a vehicle for everyone. The City Hall vehicle is not just for City Hall as well. It's for the city assessor. So the city assessor goes out to inspect properties as well, and then everyone in City Hall who needs vehicles for different operational requirements, whether it's to go to bank or go for any other meetings, right? So there's different meetings that we go to, whether they're economic development meetings, different conferences, driving governing body down to Richmond, right? So there's different things that we have to do here in City Hall, so we all kind of share share a vehicle for that purpose, but we had to loan it out because we were getting low for development services. So that's what that vehicle's for.
Thank you.
And then just a couple extra notes for fleet. So overall for Public Works, just for when you see their vehicles, just know that's not all in the general fund. Those vehicle costs actually get spread out to the enterprise funds as well. And then you saw the price tag over 5 years, about $1.5 million. So about $300,000 of that is from the new vehicles, and the rest of that's from inflation. So again, we've seen massive increases in costs for new vehicles. The sad part is, had we locked in we were supposed to do a big purchase in FY20 right before COVID. That was delayed. Had we locked that in, we would have saved the city a lot of money, because those would be the newer vehicles we would have right now. But we waited a year, and we got punished from COVID inflation because of that. So wish we had a time machine and we can go back and address that one. So, but we are seeing inflation related to that one. So facilities, I'll start it off, and then Calvin will pick up with the other departments. But this is the big ticket item when it comes to facilities. Again, every department was taken care of during the 2000s in terms of facilities, as were our schools. The only ones who were left were City Hall and Public Works, or really Calvin's entire department, the Community Development Services, which some of them were working in City Hall and some of them are down at the Public Works building. So that was the last one. They have the oldest building in the city, and we need to take care of them. And we're looking at utilizing, again, a combination of general fund and water and sewer funds to go ahead and acquire an industrial building for their usage. But again, my goal is to utilize development proceeds to pay for that, to limit the impact on our taxpayers for that. But again, we're putting that on the budget just in case we feel we need that extra money. But we probably won't, and instead we'll utilize that funding for any renovations that needed for that building to make it work for our community development department, and more importantly for our schools as well. If we're gonna be moving their transportation employees and facility management staff and resources over to that new industrial building, so it'll be kind of like a shared facility for general services and public works. The goal is to hopefully renovate their facilities from where they're moving out to support kind of vocational training, technical training, any other kind of unique classes that they want to offer. And you'll see a project later on where they're looking at modular buildings for that. That may go away if we can achieve this project successfully, and then help them move over there. So this is a big ticket item. This is the last major facility item that the city had left. After this, of course, it's all going to come in the 30s and 40s, and even we're seeing the impact right now. It's going to be a lot of renovations of all those buildings that we acquired, so that's going to be the next step after that. But again, my goal has been to address those two, City Hall and Public Works building, without impacting the city dollars. So again, I'm going to bring kind of a development plan to finance that project to not impact the city. Okay, and I'll be followed up by Calvin. Any questions on the community development building?
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. The first slide today is police station improvements. We have the leak repairs to the building. That is currently, we did a leak test on the building, and we are having the specifications and drawings prepared to go out in the RFP. The RFP will hopefully go out within the next 30 days here, but we are anticipating that those leak repairs will carry on. There is some funding in '23, but they will carry over into FY24. Building caulk and paint. That is a project that we are also looking to address, may wind up in the same scope, but we are currently carrying it as a separate project. We're just waiting to see if we can get economies of scale through this RFP, try to address that, and the precast stone work. There are some images after this slide, I believe, that will show you the condition of some of the precast stone on the front of the building. It's in pretty bad shape. That was a comment from the person that is actually doing the specifications when he toured the building. He wanted to know if we had any intentions of addressing that, and I told him it was already in the CIP. But also the PD electrical equipment. Now, we are trying to phase that to after the leak repairs are completed. But a lot of the electrical equipment that is in question because of the leaks in the building. We did have lost a switch. I think we've lost a transfer switch all in that room due to the water infiltration. So as soon as we get the leak squared away, we'll be looking to replace all of the electrical equipment in that room. And the rooftop HVAC is all of the rooftop units are original to the building. So you're talking, they were probably set on the roof in 2006, and the building was occupied in 2007. So they have reached their life expectancy, if you would, and we're just kind of limping them through. Lots of replacing parts at this point, but we do need to completely replace those units and set up a new depreciation schedule there. As I was mentioning, there are some images. So these are some of the leaks in the electrical room. You can see we had originally thought they were roof leaks, but the leak testing has shown that these are actual building leaks, not coming from the roof membrane, but coming through openings in the outside walls. And here's a picture of the precast stone. You can see the caulk pulling away from the joints and lots of rust showing. Not sure if it was just bad precast or what, but there's actual reinforcement steel rusting through the precast stone. And this is a picture of the flooring that will be replaced with, as an ARPA project, I believe. This will be replaced, the flooring will be replaced. This is the fire station slide, improvements to the fire station. We're looking at a cost of $70,000 in FY24. A lot of the fire department projects that were in the CIP previously were able to be covered by ARPA funding. But this slide really gives you the details of what's going on at the fire station. We'll have the digital LED sign installation project in 24 and the bay fan installation in 24, and that's to keep air flowing in the bays. The rest of them will happen in FY25 and subsequent. The public parking lots project is really about lighting and resurfacing. We are resurfacing the fire department parking lot this year. We will then move on. In the next slide, you'll see a list of our anticipated schedule for parking lot resurfacing, but we're also updating all of the parking lot lighting with LED lighting. That's been a really successful project, has actually been, there's been a lot of cost savings in that project, so we believe this estimate may be a little more than we need to cover it, but the community center lot, but this is, it's really nice to have those, energy reduction, and they're also much brighter, light the area up better. Looking at the parking lot resurfacing, the Costello Park, there are some areas that are in really bad shape, and because of the condition, the parking lot being relatively new, we don't want to allow water to continue to infiltrate in, so we are looking at the community center primary lot immediately after addressing some of the worst areas of Costello Park. There's already some cracking, not much alligator cracking in the community center parking lot, but any cracking is going to allow moisture in, and it's going to turn into alligator cracking, and at that point, you've really lost the battle. So, transportation projects. The culvert projects, I think most people are familiar with the battle we've been having with culverts. The good news is that Mosby was completely replaced with a box culvert. Denver was replaced back in 2016. And currently, as we speak, the 4 culvert barrels that go underneath of Railroad Drive are all 4 being worked on. 2 of them are completely rehabilitated already. The other 2 are in progress. So if you guys have seen the cones along Railroad Drive, you don't really usually see people. They're all up under the street working on the culverts, but the good news is that project will be done very shortly. We'll be turning all of our attention. The RFP is on the street for Russia Branch under Manassas Drive. So hopefully we won't have much to talk about with culverts moving forward. But the Manassas Drive at Public Works culvert will be the very next one on our list to address. Those are not major culverts. They're not carrying something as significant as Russia Branch, but they are in pretty poor shape. They're corrugated metal culverts, and Manassas Drive is a very substantial roadway, especially to the city of Manassas Park. So we'll be looking to address that, probably put it out to bid, get completed design in 24, and try to get it out on the street in 24 if we can. Street resurfacing and maintenance, we have really a few lines that fall into this category. Street improvements and resealing is the general street resurfacing line that we carry in the CIP. We've been able to allocate $353 for that so far in FY24 throughout the process. Additional streets projects was really a catch-all to cover major sidewalk, groupings of sidewalk and curb and gutter replacement, concrete, and then if we had any sort of shortfall with our street improvements and resealing, we have also used additional street projects to sort of match that money if we have a major resurfacing project. But Manassas Drive primary extension resurfacing, there is a primary extension program through VDOT, and Manassas Drive does carry a primary extension from Mathis Avenue to the city boundary over near Lomond. And that should have qualified last go-around, and it certainly qualifies, but it didn't get funding. We're very hopeful that in '24 we will get that funding, and that is 100%. We don't have to match that. So we will be resurfacing all of Manassas Drive again. And some people may say, well, you just resurfaced it 6-7 years ago. What about the rest of the city? Well, this is 100% funding. Right. It's an opportunity that VDOT gives us, and if anybody's paying attention, there's a lot of water breaks, a lot of gas work. There's a lot of holes put in that pavement, so it doesn't stay pretty for long. So it's always due for some work. We're looking at spending about $1.85 million in FY24 on resurfacing activities and additional streets projects, and the majority of that will be the $1.4 million from VDOT if we get it for the primary extension work. Downtown transportation infrastructure. This is to address projects that will improve transportation through the downtown. We're talking the addition of sidewalks, traffic calming measures, and crosswalk improvements, you name it. But this is really, the time is now. We have added new buildings. We're working on new buildings in our downtown. People will need a sense of place. People will need that pedestrian safety and accommodation, and we're planning on spending $600,000 in FY24 towards this effort. Traffic signal improvements. We have an ongoing project to upgrade all of the equipment in our traffic signals. This was originally envisioned to cover like the back plates and any aging equipment inside the cabinet. But recently we've heard complaints about the Opticom system. Opticom is a great system, but it does start to fail, parts need replaced, and it's like any other piece of traffic equipment. You are better served if all of your cabinets match so that you can keep one type of equipment in inventory. So this project, this new Opticom project, will cover getting the latest and greatest version of Opticom at every signal in the city. And for those who aren't familiar with what Opticom is, that is your preempt that the fire department and police can use to trigger the signal to turn green in the direction that they're traveling, so that if there is a queue of traffic in front of them, that queue of traffic can clear and they can more efficiently get through the intersection. We're looking at total cost of for traffic signal improvements is $145,000 in FY24. The concrete intersection at Owens, we spent a lot of time going up to Owens Drive and making patches, both where the large trucks slow to turn right onto Owens Drive and where they slow on Owens Drive to make a left onto Euclid. Both of those areas, because of the weight of the vehicles, suddenly slowing down at the stop bars or slowing down to make the turns, are buckling and pushing up the pavement. It's not really fixable no matter how much depth of asphalt we put out there. We had recently done a project on Euclid where we increased the pavement depth. It did not stop the buckling of the pavement. But concrete certainly will. Concrete is what you see out at Route 28. If a truck can buckle concrete, it's a really big truck. But unfortunately, we don't have any other solution. We spend a lot of time. We get a lot of complaints from the businesses down there about the condition of the pavement. This may be the only way to sort of quell those complaints and stop spending a lot of time resurfacing in that area. But it's total anticipated cost of $500,000 in FY24. Transportation Master Plan. Now this project, we've talked about this for a couple years. This has been in our plans. Manassas did the same exercise. You can have piecemeal projects, but at some point in time, it's very essential to stop and look at the big picture and what are the key projects, and let them guide your CIP plans, let them guide your comprehensive plan, let them guide the decisions that you make for funding, so that you always have an eye on your priorities and you don't lose sight of those. But this project, we're really at a point now, we've got so many transportation studies going on that this would simply just fill in the blanks. We've got so many active transportation studies that this would simply pick what those studies didn't do, apply them, and we'd really be looking at Manassas Drive, Euclid, Mathis, not so much 28, because 28's been addressed with so many of its own studies, and now there's an Innovative Intersections project going on that touches Manassas Park. So this would really just fill in the blanks of those studies that are ongoing and give us a large picture of what Manassas Park should have, and this may be attached as an appendix to the comprehensive plan at some point, but it's a crucial piece for us to have to guide staff decisions. BRE parking garage. The parking garage is actually out to bid. We're not quite sure what the price is going to come back in after the bid, but right now we know that we're anticipating at least a $2.5 million shortfall. Because the garage was relocated from its original proposed location at the Bays Tract, the downtown development shifted it to where it should be, which is right across from the existing platform. But in that relocation, since VRE had already started the design, there are costs associated with that. And there are also changes in the layout of the garage. Definitely beneficial to the city, having an entire level dedicated to public parking. But there is a cost in that the city must absorb. This right here is to absorb that, is to show that the city has to pay this out. This is not a city fund, it's not a city managed project, but we do have to contribute to the funding.
And just a reminder too, it's really, we own the ground, the garage itself. The first level is ours at all times. The upper three levels are intended for VRE usage, and we'll have kind of a shared maintenance for that garage. We're also applying for another state grant as well to cover any other additional gaps, because as you see across the board, you're just seeing inflation everywhere. So we've already submitted another grant, like Calvin's team secured this $2.5 million. We're aggressively pursuing more funding sources as well.
The Systemic Safety Improvements Project, this is a federal highway grant program, and this is actually, we're very lucky to get this kind of money. There were some concerns about safety all along the Manassas Drive corridor, but this has looked at, and this is ongoing, but the actual projects resulting from the study will be executed in FY24. But this has looked at the entire length of Manassas Drive, that is our primary corridor, looked at some of the safety issues, and as you can read in the slide, this is not one type of improvement. This is a myriad of improvements to try to make the city safer for not only drivers, but for pedestrians, for bicyclists, and everyone. But this altogether, we're looking at $1 million in FY24, but it's all grant funding.
Cool.
The registrar is not here. I think we forgot to include her in the invite, so that's my fault. But if you have any questions for, there was one project, a voting machine replacement. This has been on the CIP for quite a while. If you have any questions for Patricia, please send me the email, and I'll make sure to follow up with her. But this is a self-explanatory project. We need voting machines for elections, and it's time to replace them. So this is the estimated price tag. Any questions for me on this? No? Okay.
I had a question of Calvin,
Yes.
on the street resurfacing.
Could you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Question on street resurfacing, where does Digital Drive fall in that plan?
You're talking about the annual replacement?
Surfacing.
Oh, I think she's talking about-
Street improvements and resealing.
Yeah.
So we did the Fugro analysis where VDOT has all the pavement in Virginia that they're responsible for scored by this really nice analysis truck that Fugro has put together. We were able to get that company to come out under VDOT's contract and drive everything in the city and give us a new type of assessment of all of our pavement. So what we did was we sat down with that scoring, we reviewed it, we looked at staff recommendations from the streets department, what they thought their priorities were, and we sat down and we sort of tried to fit last year, this FY23 budget. So those projects are already in the works. They were approved by the governing body. Digital Drive,
Yeah, that one scored in bad condition, but actually that one was kind of the straight line challenge. So there's other roads that are bigger priorities because of the types of cracks that impact motorists. So unfortunately, 40% of our roads are in really bad condition. So and they were all very close. So a lot of it becomes we have a set amount of budget, so we're playing Tetris essentially with which roads we can fit within the budget each year, but we're pulling from kind of the worst quality roads. And then also there's some roads that where the entire length of the road may not have been considered the worst, but there's specific segments within that road that if you measured that is like the worst part of the city. So we were looking to address those areas as well. And one of those examples was in Greenshire that popped up this year. So Digital Drive is on our radar. It didn't score as badly because of the type. If you notice, if you're driving on Digital, I live off Digital as well, it's kind of a long line, right? So when you're driving over it, you're not necessarily,
Well, actually, there are two, and we're gonna
Yeah,
have to start
it is-
cutting the
it is
grass
split.
in
It's-
the middle of the street pretty soon.
yeah, there's some maintenance issues there, but there's other parts of it, like especially if you go on the west side, there's a lot of streets where was it the alligator cracking, where it's kind of circular, really causes damage or issues to vehicles, and that's what we want to prioritize. But digital is on our radar. It is considered it did score very bad, but that's because of how the length of that crack on that road.
And I
Yeah.
guess because that's where you travel most, you see that. I mean, I don't go all around the city all the time looking at the cracks in the streets.
But
But
it's
I
a major
see that
road, yeah.
every day
Yeah.
that I drive out and I go, it just keeps getting worse, you know?
that, as Laszlo said, the problem with digital is it scored almost identically to so many other streets
That need it
we're
more.
going to have to sit
Yeah.
there and take that large lump of streets that all scored the same and just sort of see
Draw out
what
of it.
fits in the budget each year,
I'll
what
draw it out of the
mixture.
hat.
Well,
Yeah.
it's right now what we do is if we think we're going to be able to afford 3 to 4 street sections, we may have the contractor give us estimate on 7, 8 street sections. And so that we can look at those estimates and maximize all the money that we have budgeted. But, then those other projects that don't get paved that year go back into the mix and we try again next year.
Start all
But
over again.
digital, will it be paved next year? I don't know. We really haven't started looking at what we're going to do with the FY24. We're still waiting for Branscombe to come out and do the FY23 paving, but we'll do the same exercise we did last year, which is taking the Fugro data with the streets recommendations, with citizen complaints, and seeing what are, how to best maximize the pavement funding we have allotted for that year.
Understand also, when we don't have hard winters, it helps,
Yeah,
because you don't have to be scraping them all the time.
It's a challenge because it's an art, a science, and a financial game, right? Because
Yeah,
we have the scientific data now with the Fugro study. It gives the actual data for how bad the road is. It's an art because we rely on our public works crew who are driving the streets every day to tell us of those areas that are really bad, what are the worst sections across the city that are part of those bad streets that we really want to target that really cause issues for our motorists and our residents. And then again, it's a financial game, like how much of those streets can we fit into the budget as well. So,
Right.
yeah.
Thank
But
you.
again, we're trying to increase this number. That was the goal. One of the governing body priorities it was to kind of double the funding that we have for street improvement because we hear it from our residents consistently. So we've been averaging before $250,000 each year. Going up, 350, 400. It's going to get over 500,000. I want to say by FY25 or 26. So we are going to be doubling to achieve the objectives that the governing body laid out for investing more in street improvements and resealing, and then hopefully with economic development we can add even more. My long-term goal right now, we get funding from VDOT every year for transportation purposes. That's really funding a lot of the operating items and our streets division. I really want to eventually, when our economic position improves, for the city to fund our streets division staffing, and then really just use that VDOT money for resurfacing to kind of grow that number even further as well. That's a long-term objective that we have.
Good, thank you.
Just quickly on elections, what is the expected replacement cycle for voting machines?
I want to say it was 8 to 10 years, but I'll have to follow up with Patricia because this has been on the CIP, I know, for a few years. So it's definitely longer than, it's not just every 3-4 year thing. I think they do last a little bit longer, but I'll follow up with Patricia and get back to you all. Yeah.
Thanks.
But this has been, I think, on CIP since I started, so it's been a while.
We haven't had new
Yeah.
machines for ever.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to schools, we have Mr. Eric Neff. Sorry, and I mistakenly left this slide. We can actually skip this slide because that's a summary of the 5-year, which, unless you want to talk about it, but we can go straight into FY24.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Eric Neff. I'm the Executive Director of Operations and Student Services for the School Division. I have about 8 projects here to present tonight. The first one is a project that has been ongoing for a number of years, and it's replacement of the individual classroom units. Those units which operate on the R22 refrigerant. That refrigerant is very difficult to find now, and also if you do find it, it's very expensive. So those classroom or window units are being replaced at Cougar and at the high school as they fail. And so we are replacing anywhere from 4 to 6 of those every year. And a lot of those units are still the units that were originally installed when the high school was built in '99 and Cougar was built in 2001, I believe it was. The second project is the replacement of buses. In the justification, it says that we currently have 4 buses that have hit the 15-year life cycle. That is actually incorrect. It is 6 buses after talking with Mrs. Hurley yesterday morning. And so we do have buses that are on order. As the city manager mentioned with inflation, there's also been supply chain delays, which have caused a lot of projects to be pushed back for us. But the buses have been the primarily one. We ordered 2 in 21, 22. Those buses we hope to have here by March the 1st. I've been told that the air conditioning is being placed on them right now, and we have 2 on order that should be here by June the 30th, but it is a constant battle to replace buses. We do have like I said, 6 at 15 years, we have 2 at 14 years, and we have 4 at 13 years. So the replacement cycle is 2 to 3 buses per year moving forward over the next 5 years. The third project is the upgrade of the division's cellular communication systems at the elementary campus. If any of you live over near Cougar Elementary, Manassas Park Elementary School, cell phone, Wi-Fi, it's very difficult to get service over there. Our IT department has been exploring opportunities to expand cellular services, looking at boosters, repeaters, and towers. This is a project that we plan to complete in FY24, which will allow, for a layer of safety for our students and our staff at the school. The next project's been moved up a couple years from FY26 to FY24, and that's the roof replacement at the middle school. You can see a picture here of the old roof, but we did experience some issues at the beginning of the school year with mildew and mold at the elementary or at the middle school, which required complete cleaning of the 6th grade wing, quite an expensive task for the division. So it's a project that we've moved up from FY26 to FY24, and we anticipate the cost based on the cost at what it was to replace the high school roof to be close to $2 million. The next project is a replacement of the original chiller from the high school, estimated at a cost of $200,000. Certainly, based on something that was placed in the high school in 2004. There will be energy efficiency and cost savings in the long term for the replacement of that chiller. The next project is a replacement of the choral risers. Those risers are used by our middle school and our high school choral students for performances. They're also used by our theater arts students. They were purchased in 2015. They are a little wobbly at this point over use over the past 9 years. So we're going to replace those next year as well. And the last two projects are technology infrastructure upgrades. I don't understand a lot about these two slides, but Mr. McCormick has assured me that basically what we have to do is replace the infrastructure so that it will handle current data rate at 100 times more than what we're currently handling it. Basically, it eliminates the bottlenecks that occurs from all the single units moving through the system. And the last project is the Extreme Cloud IQ Pilot, which is the wireless controller. Basically, this talks to our access points, which allows our students to access the Wi-Fi with their laptops in the school buildings. Does anybody have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Would this be a good time for a break? Administrator Berry kindly picked up some refreshments for us. I wanted to make sure we're just over halfway through, it looks like.
Yeah, just over halfway, your discretion.
Okay, maybe a 10-minute recess?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I know. We're like page 55 or slide 55.
Well, I noticed they're not numbered, not all of them.
Yeah.
Well, there's one, but I was like, how many
Yeah, it's
pages?
just the slides that are numbered.
Yeah, I think they're trying to like.
I was sort of looking for the slide numbers. I could
Me
see
too.
how far in we were.
they're-
That does take about 50 slides off, because I think it was about 140 ones.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the snack. Yeah. It's always my right. Because you know, at some point, like, it just goes. Correct. We're doing it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, some of these. You should be cut back. Yeah.
You do them anyway. Anyway.
And as always, Mrs. T always says, when you see John, tell him I said hey. So I was with her on Sunday. I said,
Yeah,
"I'll see
those
you
pictures
Wednesday
of
night."
the leak at the police station.
It was a birthday.
They were from last year. So, probably, yes, because the last couple of years.
It's funny, her caregiver, her main caregiver.
It's only getting worse.
Brooks, and she's really a super lady. As soon as she got there and they talked, you know, and of course they compared everything. And Maria's probably 70. She's not young, but ends up they have the same birthday. And she has just, she's perfect for Dolores. She's a black lady. She's from, I'm gonna say she's from the Dominican Republic. Yeah, one of those countries.
know her birthday was on
No, it was February 14th, yeah.
All these years.
Yeah. So, when you're ever down in that area, just drop in on her. She just gets so frustrated, and I can understand. I can't imagine being in the situation she's in now. And, but the neighbors are all good. Steve comes over, he'll bring her food. He makes chili, and he'll bring her a bowl of chili. Steve was over.
Besides Steve and her, I think the only other person in the neighborhood are the streams behind Steve.
Yeah, and they're all gone.
They're busy.
She has, what are their names? I want to say Blevins, that doesn't sound right.
Yes.
But Rich and Jackie, they came down here from New York, and they are really, really good neighbors to her. I mean, he drops, if she calls him, I don't care what he's doing, he drops and comes. And they're just really, really good to her. Oh, I get stiff sitting there. You tell your Kathy I said hi too. I
I will tell her that.
Well, Michael, he better get back here. I might eat his.
Steal his plate, save you a trip.
Michael, be wondering where'd it go?
Say, well, I'm pretty sure I set a plate down there. I said, you better get back here, that'll disappear.
Gonna walk away on his own.
Jeanette is like, you guys take a break after an hour?
Well, I mean, we go by the number of slides here, so we're up to slide 55. I figured at a 94, that'd be a good spot. Don't want to waste our, she's missing out on the refreshments here, that's the
I'm not gonna say what she's saying.
Uh-oh. Protect the building. They're adaptable, right? We go along. How you doing?
Good. These really thin cookies are some of my favorites.
Okay. And if you like the taste of them, then you can't just have one, right? Go ahead, we'll make more. Took off about 45 slides there, maybe 50. Maybe there was about 140 slides about that. So this is pretty good.
Yeah, it's moving.
We're already halfway through. No need to wait until the end there.
I like doing it this way better than going through all.
See, I never saw that, so I'm glad we started this way. I mean, you know, one night out of the year, you just cut through and it's done. And that way you get the initial hearing, the presentation.
This is in 30-some years here.
Okay.
These are actually the best presentations that I've ever seen here.
Good.
The most thorough, the most easiest to understand.
Okay, cool. Great.
Because I mean, they're pretty easy to understand.
Yes,
When they're popping
yes,
through
they're
the
very
slides.
detailed and they've got, they want you to take a look at what they got it set up that way.
Yeah, the last two best presentations I've ever seen here.
Good. Well, I'm happy we're moving in that direction. That's cool. That's good. I figure over to like 10 or so. Oh, Martha, take her moment here.
got it. I got my annual in March, so I gotta trim down. Good?
Better than what you do when you get the doctors.
There was a washout done. I don't know if you've seen the cones over
Yeah, we're trying to get on their occupational health.
just past Railroad Drive.
That'd be nice.
I guess toward Signal Hill. On the right-hand side, there are some cones there.
Oh, yeah, I knew about that.
I take a walk,
Oh, so you get to see it up close and
and
personal.
I saw that one day, and
Oh.
I emailed Kelvin, and I
Oh,
said,
God, thanks.
it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they were able to find it. I thought I remembered it on the incline, but it was just across the way. So anyway,
Thanks,
I'm glad they, well,
Bailing
my pleasure. I mean, I like taking a walk on that side of the street. I wouldn't have seen it otherwise. But,
Yeah, you really don't see what's under the roads, but there's a lot.
oh, yes. There's a lot of stuff we don't need to see either,
Yep,
but.
you don't want to be reminded
yep,
about it when
yeah.
it doesn't work.
Yes. Yeah, when it came up right that close to the road, it was like when I had to step into the road pretty much to get around it. That's not good. Very good. I'll call the meeting back to order. The time is 8:10. You may proceed. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mario Luke. I'm the Chief of Police with Manassas Park Police Department. I'm here to present the CIP for the Police Department for FY24. The first item is every 3 to 5 years, Motorola requires an upgrade on the radio system. We were informed earlier this year that the 5 years are up and a upgrade is required. Since we share the system with Manassas City, we're responsible for 23% of the $618,000. That's the cost. So the city cost will be $142,336. Couple of the upgrades will be all the radios that our officers carry in the vehicles, our consoles at our dispatch center, also some firewall upgrades and some server upgrades, and all the workstations that we have in our police department will be upgraded. The next item is for our fleet, the 14 vehicles that Keith discussed earlier that we're looking for replacement. This is equipment that cannot be purchased through Enterprise or our outfitters, so we are required to purchase it ourselves, which we get better pricing, and that would be our in-car cameras, our Motorola radios, and mobile data terminals for our vehicles. With inflation, the cost did go up from what I presented last year, so the new numbers reflect that inflation. The last item is night vision capabilities. With all the threats and the crime we have seen in our region, we've seen a lot of people flee us. I think this is a great tool for our officers to utilize, especially if somebody flees as danger to our citizens or our residents and our community. It'll allow us to approach safely and call the individual out and avoid any excessive use of force or any type of force at all. And also for anybody that comes up missing, gets lost, should be able to locate them quicker and be able to clear areas and see if we can locate them. So this was brought up to me a few years back when I took over as chief, and I think it's a great piece of equipment that our officers can utilize. So we're requesting 10 units. They're kind of expensive, but I think it'll pay off in the long run. And I'll take any questions.
Questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. So, Fire Department has 3 items that we'll run through real quick. The first one is, oops, go that way. First one is the upfit cost for the 2 vehicles that Keith talked about earlier. The first one was for the battalion chief, which serves as our unified command truck currently for both PD and fire for anything we have public safety wise. Pretty big outfit for that cost, $74,000. The second one would be for the new deputy fire marshal that the governing body approved a few months ago. We currently do not have a vehicle for that individual, so we'll have to get that vehicle for that individual and put a upfit cost to it. The second one is to replace the special services vehicle, which is our UTV off-road vehicle. When we got that vehicle, we got it back in 2012 through a UASI grant, so at no cost to the city. But we are looking to replace that 2012 vehicle now, especially since we have 2 large parks now to take care of. And the third item is the replacement of the 2013 ambulance. We call it a medic unit because we staff it with paramedics. It's going to be $410,000 through starting FY '24. What we're looking at there, of course, is inflation costs, but we also look for the extended build times. It used to take anywhere from 6 to 8 months. Now we're at 14 to 24 months to build that. We just got one in October of last year that we ordered a year and a half prior. Our vendor has actually ordered the chassis for us for the FY '24 purchase, should the governing body approve that in July. That process has already started to kind of cut down that time a little bit. So those would be the 3 projects.
Good evening. I'll be presenting 10 total projects this evening for Parks and Recreation. Of the 10, only 2 are new or unique. The other 8 are existing carryover projects from last fiscal year. So first, we have the outdoor staircase and walkway installation at Signal Hill Park. Comes in at $92,000. Essentially, what we're trying to do here is replace the existing wooding staircase with a concrete staircase and walkway. That'll allow us to have much greater longevity in the structure, but also, too, it's going to significantly reduce our maintenance cost over the long haul. This current structure is about 15 years old, and it's in very bad disrepair. We're kind of at the point now where making repairs are, very temporary at best, and it really needs to be, rebuilt. Next is a retaining wall demo rebuild and basketball court resurface. Costello Park comes in at $312,000. This project just entails demoing, tearing down the existing stone wall, rebuilding a segmental wall in its place, and then milling up the existing asphalt, resurfacing, official court lines, new basketball hoops, new fence, to complete the project. The 2 need to happen simultaneously, just given the nature of the of how the 2 projects kind of work off of each other. And again, massive cracks, fissures in the asphalt impacts competitive play. And then as far as the wall itself, you can see in the picture, chunks of mortar, concrete, stone are falling out into the adjacent sidewalk. Next, we have the Wellness Center strength equipment purchase. This is at the community center. This comes in at $155,000. So this is a total overhaul of the strength equipment. This includes free weights as well as selectorized machines. Industry standard recommends 7 to 10 years for replacement. So we're looking at 14 years for one side, 10 for the other. So in both cases, we're kind of at that point where we do need to make the move. And back in FY '20, we did the cardiovascular overhaul. So the 2, once we get this done, it'll be a while before we need to move forward with any additional equipment replacement. Next, we have the walking path bollard replacement in Costello Park, $30,000. So we're looking to remove the 21 existing, and really that's 17 because we've got 4 offline as we speak. Bollards replaced with 7 LED options. We'll affix 5 of them to the existing light poles in the parking lot, and then 2 will go to the actual building itself. On either side of the front of the building, one side will hit the pathway adjacent to the playground and pavilion. The other side will be the rear pool deck towards the veterans lot. Just with the technology is, so antiquated at this point with these existing bollards, we can't really get replacement parts. And when we do find parts, they're incredibly expensive. So this will allow us to be more energy efficient and save some money in the long haul. Next is our special event equipment project. This is kind of explicitly for the downtown plaza. The goal here, it's $180,000, but $60,000 of that is earmarked for FY24. The goal here is to have a continuous kind of allotment of funds coming in every year to help support resources to keep a continual, event presence in the downtown. In particular, the $60,000 represents some purchases kind of necessary for next year. A large Christmas tree, plaza decorations for the holidays, large heaters, and a sound system. Pretty much makes up that $60,000. Next, we have the perimeter caulk and white coat replacement, both at Signal Bay Water Park. These come in at $29,000 and $85,000 respectively. Both of these projects were last completed during the 2015 Signal Bay Water Park renovation. Time-wise, these should be done about the caulk should be done about every 5 years, the white coat about every 7 to 8. So we're certainly at that point where we really do need to make this move. Again, the risk here by delaying this is compromising the concrete and beams by allowing water to seep in. So we're just trying to avoid that and getting this rectified before that happens and causes a lot of damage. Next, we have the Signal Bay Water Park furniture refresh. This comes into $55,000. We did a furniture refresh at the community center this fiscal year. This is kind of the other side of that. You can see there the picture. One of those Chase Lounge chairs is pretty rough shape. Most of our equipment is similar in nature. So aesthetically, it creates a problem, but also from a safety and functionality standpoint, that's also problematic. So we're just looking to replace 100 of the lounge chairs, 50 dining chairs, and 20 picnic tables, and kind of overhaul that whole equipment or that whole furniture line. Next, we have a zero-turn mower replacement, $14,000 for 24. The goal is to move forward with 2 units in 25, which would be $28,000. The Parks Division manages over 400 acres of parkland. About 80 acres of that is mowable space. With Blooms Park kind of on the docket nowadays, we definitely rely on these zero-turn mowers to kind of like be efficient and gets, all the fields at Signal Hill and then all the large open space at Blooms taken care of. So in 24, we're looking to replace one of our original units. We have a fleet of 4, and then in 25, we would be replacing units 2 and 3. So those are our 3 oldest units. And lastly is a LED transition at the community center. The goal here is to spend $50,000 in FY24, just to basically start the transition to all LED platform. We currently have fluorescent and HID lighting options. So with LED, we can become much more energy efficient. It will have much greater longevity, and just the practicality as far as the versatility and application just makes a lot of sense to go completely convert to LED. So that's the plan there. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Hello again.
Good evening.
We'll start out with the community development specific fleet purchases. These are vehicles that we can't get through the enterprise program. But most of these vehicles are split between funds. Some of them are not. If like our flusher trucks are dedicated to either water or sewer or stormwater. But all in all, we're looking at $310,000 in costs in 24. And there is a breakdown of the 5-year between the different funds below that. But in 24, we're replacing a large dump truck. It's proving to be very tricky because the market for dump trucks is really hot right now. But that dump truck will be split between all 3 funds. But the flusher truck that will replace the current flusher truck 142, that flusher truck is just for water and sewer. and that's financed over 5 years. So we won't be buying that outright. Public Works equipment. This is all of the tools and specialty equipment that Public Works uses to maintain the infrastructure throughout the city. Altogether, $276,000 in FY24. But we're purchasing a new rubber tire loader. That rubber tire loader was actually retired at the beginning of snow season. It was a safety hazard. So we are currently renting a rubber tire loader to get us through snow season, and then we will have to, if we have any need to use a loader to like empty the rugby yard or anything like that, we'll be renting until we can get a replacement in hand. But the towable air compressor, still on the street, but regrettably so. It's becoming a maintenance issue. And then the new UTV to replace the current streets UTV. We use that for not just special events, but also for marking out streets for sweeping, when we have to go out and put the stakeout signs ahead of our sweeping operations. So that vehicle will be replaced in '24 as well. Miscellaneous projects. The first one is we have a beautiful city hall here and Building C that belongs to Norton Scott, but we need to decorate these with holiday decorations like a real city downtown, so that when people are here during the holiday season, they have the real sense of place. But a total anticipated cost, and this is a rough estimate, $50,000 in FY24 to get holiday lights on these buildings. Property demolition. This is a project that we carry annually to cover any cost of demolishing structures that have been declared unsafe or unfit and that the owner has failed to correct. So we're not anticipating any coming up in FY24 because we're not in the process. We haven't declared anything unfit or unsafe. So we're not budgeting anything in FY24 at this time, but we typically would carry $25,000 a year to cover projects like that. Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund projects. The first is our RUMS line. That's repair, replacement, upgrade, and maintenance. And this is sort of a catch-all for our very large repair projects. You know, as things fail at the pump stations, the water tanks, the lift stations, those are immediate emergencies that can get very costly very fast. So we do carry a substantial amount of money in that line to cover that. We're carrying $900,000 in FY24. But again, there's no specific projects, and what we try to do with the remainder of the money is to address any I&I issues that are especially low-hanging fruit. Sewer line relining, manhole replacements, or grouting, things of that nature. Our phased water system improvements, Phase 6, will go out to bid this year. It was designed several years ago, but Phase 6 will finally be put out to bid, and then we'll move on to Phase 7, Phase 8, and Phase 9. In FY24, we're anticipating probably spending the remainder of the Phase 6 money and also starting design work on Phase 7. Phase 6 will be this section of Yost, Martin, and Lambert Drive that you see in the illustration. Phase 7 will be this section of Manassas Drive between Kent and Baker, or actually to the city's western limits beyond Baker. And then Phase 8 will address Manassas Drive from Courtney down to the intersection of Cabell. Stormwater Enterprise Fund projects. Again, Stormwater Enterprise has its own RUMS line, repair, replacements, upgrades, and maintenance. This is a catch-all, but we've really been expending most of this money on dilapidated corrugated metal pipe. Seems to be the story of our lives lately. But we're carrying $210,000 in FY24 towards this effort. Connor Center maintenance projects, again, corrugated metal. Most of these pictures that you see taken throughout the Connor Center are where corrugated metal lines were put in place as opposed to precast concrete, reinforced concrete. They've started to rot and deteriorate. In some instances, you can't even see the line when you try to televise it. It's just completely collapsed. So we, again, are trying to address these issues throughout the Connor Center right now. We're anticipate spending $105,000 in FY24 towards this effort. TMDL reduction projects. This is, Laszlo spoke on this a little bit earlier. We used to say Russia Branch stream restoration was going to be where we got, over 90% of our total TMDL reductions for the final cycle. But actually, Russia Branch through the golf course is probably not our best candidate as we're learning. We're starting to look at some of the flat branch tributaries, but stream restoration still is best bang for your buck. So stream restoration will probably get us the majority of the way to our TMDL reduction requirements, but we also have the Connor Center Pond 1 retrofit that was delayed because of the village project implementation. We did not want to do that project and then all of a sudden have it filled up with silt and sediment from this activity here. So there'll be a slight redesign to accommodate the village, and then that project will be put out to bid. And then other TMDL projects is identified. Most of these have not been identified. When we finish the stream restoration, when Connor Center Pond 1 is on the books, we will have some remainder out there, whether it be suspended solids, nitrogen, phosphorus. There will be some leftovers that we need to address, and we will hand pick at that point the projects that get us those at the least amount of cost. But altogether, we anticipate $10.9 million in FY24.
And some positives with the new strategy, it's the cost should likely be a lot less for the streams that we're evaluating. The challenge is we're going to have to work with some HOAs in our city to get the approval, but at least the streams within their HOA area should be restored and beautified. So hopefully we get cooperation, but we're hoping to save our taxpayers a significant amount of money by pursuing a smarter strategy to less costly projects with the help of the private sector contractors who kind of evaluated this for us to accomplish our TMDL goals at the lowest cost possible.
Great.
Any questions?
Doesn't look like that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And that's all we have for tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, just as a kind of timetable, so in March, I can be back here for any questions you have about the CIP. You can email me questions in advance if you'd like, and I can prep them and come back here and give you guys answers. And then in April, we'll be asking that you do a vote, but I'm also going to be able to update you on kind of the revenue position for the CIP and what we could afford and kind of the recommended timelines for some of these projects as well.
Okay. Thank you. Great. Wonderful. Okay, we'll move along then. No unfinished business to attend to. No report of special committees. Informational update from community development staff. Administrator Barry.
Thank you, Chairman. The only thing I do have to report is we are moving along with the Phase 4 of the downtown rezoning. We did get a resubmittal late last week and early this week, so it is out for staff comment and review, and so hopefully we'll be bringing that forward to you in the next few months.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any questions. Very good. Thank you. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The time is 8:33.
And that is a record.
Well, thank you for, thank you for your support on that one.
That's amazing.
And that's with the break, too, so that's
know.
great.